The name of the story, The Last Dance in Manhattan. New York City pulsed with the rhythm of ambition, noise, and relentless movement. Skyscrapers pierced the late afternoon sky, and taxis honked their way through crowded avenues. Among the chaos, inside a softly lit ballroom tucked away in the Upper East Side, a different kind of music played, slow, graceful, inviting. The charity gala was already in motion. Glittering guests moved through the marble foyer, sipping champagne and exchanging air kisses. But tucked at the back of the venue, past the string quartet and the silent auction tables, a sign read, "Charity Dance Lesson, 6:30 p.m. Instructor, Veronica Lane." Veronica Lane stood at the center of the polished floor, her posture elegant, every movement purposeful, even in stillness. Her hair was swept into a loose chignon, a few soft strands framing her striking face. Years of stage performances gave her presence, the kind that made people pause when she entered a room, even if they didn't know why. She adjusted the strap of her dress, scanned the crowd slowly forming in front of her, and then her gaze landed on him. Liam Callahan had never felt more out of place in his life. His tuxedo was perfect, tailored, precise, probably worth more than most of the donations made that night. But his body was rigid, uncertain. He stood on the edge of the dance floor like a man preparing for battle. "This is a terrible idea," he murmured under his breath. "Excuse me," said a voice beside him. A woman in red smiled politely, then drifted past. Liam shook his head, muttering an apology. His assistant had convinced him to come. "It'll be good for PR," she'd said. "Smile. Dance. Make eye contact. You're not a robot, Liam." He wasn't. At least, he hoped not. Then Veronica clapped her hands, and his thoughts scattered. "Welcome, everyone," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "Don't worry. We're not here to perfect technique. We're here to connect, to let go, to enjoy movement." Liam stepped reluctantly onto the floor, trying not to trip over his own feet. Veronica's eyes scanned the small group again, lingering on him for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. He noticed, and for some reason, that glance felt like sunlight. Veronica began with simple instructions, demonstrating with the ease of someone who had danced since childhood. Her feet moved fluidly across the floor, arms light and expressive. Every motion told a story. Liam, on the other hand, was already sweating under the collar of his shirt. "Find a partner," she said gently. "Someone new. Someone who looks as uncertain as you feel." A few polite chuckles rippled through the group. Liam glanced around. People were pairing off, some quickly, some awkwardly. And then, just as he was about to turn and slip away, he heard her voice, closer this time. "Don't worry. I won't bite," said Veronica, stepping directly in front of him. He froze. "Oh," he managed. "I wasn't. I didn't want to." She smiled. "Relax. I saw you hiding over here. Come on, let's dance." She held out her hand, and for a moment, the air between them felt like electricity. Liam stared at her hand as though it might detonate. Then he took it. Her skin was warm, steady, and in that one touch, something shifted. Veronica guided his hand to her waist and placed his other hand in hers. "Close enough," she said, adjusting his hold slightly. "Try not to look like you're delivering a financial presentation." He laughed, a real laugh, surprised himself with it. "I'm Liam," he said, voice low. "I know," she replied. "Everyone knows who you are." He looked mildly horrified. "That bad?" "Not bad. Just visible." The music began again, a soft, vintage waltz. Veronica counted gently, leading him through the first few steps. He was stiff, uncoordinated, stepping too soon or too late. But she was patient. "Listen to the rhythm," she whispered. "It's not in your head. It's here." She guided his palm to her shoulder, then lower, near her heart, and here. Liam swallowed hard. And suddenly, with her body so close, her hand in his, her gaze steady and kind, the world blurred. The awkwardness faded. Something about her steadied him, calmed him, and he was dancing, clumsily, barely, but moving in sync with her, like a man following a current he didn't understand but didn't want to escape. Their eyes met. He tripped. She caught him with a quick hand to his chest. "Easy," she said with a laugh. "That one's on me." I was distracting. No, I think you just saved my life. She grinned. Well then, you owe me a second dance. The lesson continued for another 20 minutes, and Liam found himself less focused on the steps and more on the woman guiding him through them. Veronica moved like she was still on stage, graceful, unhurried, but never distant. Her touch was precise, her voice like silk laced with quiet fire. When the music stopped, the room applauded politely. Pairs broke apart, smiling and exchanging thank yous. The next speaker at the gala was preparing to take the microphone in the main hall. Liam released her hand, reluctantly. Thank you, he said, for the rescue and the patience. Veronica tilted her head. You're better than you think. That's generous. No, she said. I've danced with people who had no rhythm and no soul. You're hiding both. That stopped him cold. Liam glanced down at the floor, then back up at her. You read people well. I have to. It's part of the job. Dancer or therapist? She smiled, eyes playful. Both, sometimes. They stood in silence for a moment. Around them, the crowd thinned as people returned to the gala program. But Liam didn't move. Neither did she. Then Veronica asked softly, Do you like the theater, Liam? He blinked. That was unexpected. He hesitated. Yes, very much. Really? Her brows rose slightly. You don't seem like the type. That's the point, he replied, a little too quickly. No one expects it. Not in my world. Art doesn't earn compound interest. She laughed, a real melodic laugh that made something flutter in his chest. I miss it, she said. The stage, the lights, the breath right before the curtain rises. Do you know that feeling? I've watched it. From the dark. Veronica looked at him, surprised. Opening nights. Back rows. Alone. Why alone? He shrugged. No one to go with. Or no one who'd understand. Her expression softened. That's a shame, she whispered. Theater is meant to be shared. Then, without warning, she stepped a little closer. Her voice dropped lower, more intimate. I know a place. Not far from here. An old theater. Abandoned, almost. But still breathes late at night. He looked at her carefully. And sometimes I go there, she said. When I can't sleep. When I want to remember who I was before the world asked me to be someone else. Her eyes met his again, direct, unguarded. Come with me. Liam didn't answer immediately. The gala continued behind them, like a distant storm of glitter and noise. But in that moment, under the soft chandeliers and the fading music, he nodded. Lead the way. The city was quieter now. The gala had faded into background memory, and the black car that took them downtown hummed gently beneath the streetlights. Liam sat beside Veronica, unsure of how close to sit or what to say. She didn't fill the silence. She let it breathe. And strangely, that made him trust her more. They arrived at a narrow street in the East Village, the kind tourists overlooked, the kind artists never forgot. The theater's facade was worn. The letters on the marquee faded to ghosts. A single flickering bulb above the entrance buzzed softly. This place is still open, Liam asked, stepping out into the night air. Not officially, she said, already unlocking the side door with an old silver key. But it remembers me. Inside, the space smelled like time, wood dust, velvet, and echoes. The seats were empty, covered in plastic sheets. But the stage was clear, silent, waiting. She led him down the aisle slowly, her heels echoing softly against the cracked tiles. This was the first place I ever performed in New York, she said, glancing around. I was 19, terrified, hungry, and so alive I couldn't sleep for 3 days after. Liam looked around with wide eyes. It's beautiful. She turned on the ghost light, a single exposed bulb hanging at center stage. It threw their shadows long and strange across the backdrop. Veronica stepped up onto the stage and offered her hand again. Dance with me. No music? He asked, unsure. There's always music, she whispered. You just have to listen for it. He took her hand. They began to move, slow, uncertain at first. Her steps guided his, but this time he didn't resist, didn't overthink. He followed her lead not just with his body, but with his breath, his eyes, his heart. The silence was not empty. It was full of footsteps, glances, hidden rhythm, and something new neither of them could name yet. Her dress flowed around her like ink in water. His hand rested at the small of her back, warmer now, more confident. They moved in slow circles, a quiet orbit of two people pulled together by something stronger than chance. Then she stopped. Still holding his hand, she looked up at him. Her eyes shimmered in the low light. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," she said. Liam's throat tightened. He hesitated, not because he didn't have anything, but because he had too much. Then finally, "When I was a kid," he said, voice low, "I used to draw stage curtains in the margins of my notebooks and pretend I was somewhere else." Veronica's lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. "You?" he asked. She smiled a little sad. "Sometimes I stand in this exact spot and wait for applause that never comes. And I still bow. Every time." They stood in silence again. Then, as if drawn by gravity, they moved closer. "No kiss." Not yet, but his forehead touched hers, and their shadows, tall, tangled, soft, melted together on the dusty stage floor. The city outside was quiet, and the inside of the old theater even quieter. They didn't say much after the dance. Liam helped Veronica lock the doors, and they walked without a word through the sleeping streets, side by side, hands occasionally brushing but never holding. He offered to walk her home. She let him. Veronica's apartment was in a pre-war building. High ceilings, old creaky floors, and books stacked in artful chaos. There were ballet shoes hanging from a hook by the door, and a chipped ceramic mug holding a bouquet of used paintbrushes. "You paint?" Liam asked, stepping carefully inside. "Sometimes," she said, kicking off her shoes. "When I'm not dancing, or teaching, or remembering how much I miss both." She poured him tea without asking. They sat by the window, looking out over the rooftops. The moon hung like a forgotten spotlight over the city. "I still don't know what you're doing in a place like that," she said after a while. "What place?" "A dance class. A dusty theater. With me." He took a slow sip. "Maybe I'm looking for something that feels more real than quarterly earnings." She smiled, eyes on the skyline. "That's a good line." "It's not a line," he said, meeting her gaze. "I meant it." Something flickered across her face, something soft and cautious. "Do you always mean what you say?" she asked. "No," he admitted, "but I always know when I'm lying." She looked at him for a long moment. "And are you lying now?" He shook his head. "No, I just don't know what this is yet." Veronica nodded, then said quietly, "Me neither." They sat in the quiet again, letting the weight of that truth settle. No promises, no plans, just something unnamed and new blooming between them in the stillness of the night. The next morning came with sunlight streaming through windows and the echo of unspoken thoughts. Liam left early, polite and quiet, with a half-smile and a whispered, "See you." Veronica stood in the doorway long after he was gone. Over the next 2 weeks, they began to orbit each other, sometimes deliberately, sometimes by accident. A text here, a call there. Short walks through the park after her dance classes. Coffee on cold steps before she taught. And once, a second visit to the Ghost Theater. This time he brought a speaker. They danced to old jazz, slow and smiling, and she let him take the lead. Just once, just to see. He still wasn't good, but he was better. Because of her. But real life always waits. At work, Liam was drowning in numbers. The firm had landed a massive client, and his schedule stretched until midnight. When his assistant asked why he kept humming old melodies under his breath, he just waved her off. At night, he'd open his laptop, then close it, then open her texts, then put the phone face down. Something in him was shifting. He didn't know what to do with that. The studio was empty when Veronica arrived that afternoon. Just mirrors, scuffed wooden floors, and the faint smell of rosin and sweat. She changed into her soft-soled shoes, tied her hair back, and stood in the center of the room. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Her body moved from habit, not thought. Every motion clean, every extension graceful. But something was missing. Not rhythm, not technique. Presence. The kind that once lived in her bones when the audience waited in silence, and she could hear her own heart in the wings. That feeling had vanished the day she tore a ligament on stage during her final Broadway run. A moment of pain so sharp, it split more than just muscle. She'd never said goodbye to the theater properly. She just disappeared, faded out. And now, somehow, it had found her again, in him. But Liam hadn't texted in 3 days. No call, no message, no note. And the strangest part wasn't the silence itself. It was that it hurt. She wasn't supposed to feel this way. Not again. Meanwhile, across town, Liam stared blankly at a spreadsheet filled with numbers he couldn't read anymore. His tie was loosened, his coffee cold. His phone vibrated with another internal memo. Not her. He hesitated. Opened her chat. Still empty. He typed, "I am sorry. It's been a hell week." Deleted it. Typed again. "Thinking about you." Deleted that too. His thumb hovered over the screen until finally, black screen. Power off. Because it was easier not to feel than to feel and not know what to do with it. That night, Veronica sat on the stage of the old theater, legs dangling over the edge. She held a small paper cup of wine, the kind sold at corner stores, and stared at the ghost light glowing quietly. He disappeared, she whispered to the dark. And I let him. But deep down, it wasn't just Liam she was talking to. It was Daniel, the last man who left. He'd loved her sparkle, her success. But when the curtain fell and her body broke and she could no longer shine on cue, he vanished too. "I'm tired of people falling in love with the idea of me," she whispered. And her voice cracked. 2 more days passed. And then, late on a Friday night, when the city buzzed with its usual chaos and the studio lights were already off, someone knocked at Veronica's door. She hesitated before opening. It was him. Liam stood in the hallway, in a coat too thin for the weather, hair a little disheveled, and eyes that looked like he hadn't slept properly in days. "I didn't know if I should come," he said. She didn't move. "Then why did you?" "Because I missed you." Veronica stepped aside slowly, letting him in without a word. The apartment felt smaller with him inside. Or maybe it was just the silence between them. He didn't sit, didn't take off his coat. He stood there like a man, half ready to leave again. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I got overwhelmed. The new client, the hours." "I'm not mad about the hours," she interrupted. He blinked. "I'm not mad that you worked late, or that you didn't text. She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I'm upset because it felt like I disappeared, like I didn't matter, like we didn't." Liam exhaled, slow and uneven. "That's not what I meant, but it's what it felt like." A beat of silence. Then, "I'm not good at this," he admitted. "At letting people in, at showing up in ways that count. I didn't ask for perfection, Liam. I asked for presence." Her voice didn't rise. It broke, just a little. Liam stepped closer, instinctively reaching for her hand. She let him, but didn't soften. "I like you," he said. "More than I expected to. More than I planned to. That's not the problem." "Then what is?" She met his eyes. "The problem is, I don't know if you're brave enough for this." He didn't answer right away. The quiet between them wasn't comfortable this time. Then, quietly, "I want to be." "That's not the same as being," she said gently. And she let go of his hand. He left a few minutes later. No fight. No dramatic exit. Just a heavy door and a heavier silence. Veronica stood at the window long after he disappeared from view. The next day, she didn't go to the theater or the studio. She stayed in bed late, made tea, listened to an old jazz record she hadn't played in years, and tried not to hope for the sound of a knock. 3 days later, Veronica received a text. "If you're free tonight, come to the theater. Bring no expectations. Just you. Elle. No emoji. No apology. No pressure." She stared at the message for a long time before replying. "What time?" 9 p.m. It was raining when she arrived, soft, steady drops falling like a curtain between the world and her thoughts. She pushed open the side door of the old theater, the one she used to enter like a dancer slipping through time. Inside, the space was dark. Not empty, just waiting. She stepped cautiously down the aisle toward the stage, where a faint glow flickered. Then she noticed. The rows of seats, each one, held a single white flower. On the stage sat an old, upright piano, and behind it, stiff and uncertain, was Liam. He was wearing a black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, his fingers resting on the keys. He looked up when he saw her. "Hey," he said, voice just above a whisper. She raised an eyebrow, not moving closer yet. "What are you doing?" "I'm about to embarrass myself," he said, "but I hope you'll stay." And then he played. Not perfectly, not professionally, but honestly. Simple chords, a melody barely holding together. But it was something unmistakable. It was her song. The one she used to choreograph solos to. The one no one else knew meant anything. Her eyes widened. "How do you know that?" she whispered. "I asked around. Your old choreographer sent me a video. Said this was the piece you danced when you were happiest." He kept playing, faltering a little, but never stopping. "I wanted to show up," he said, voice soft. "Not with flowers, not with promises, just with who I am. Or at least, who I'm trying to become." The music faded. The silence that followed was thick. Veronica stepped onto the stage slowly. Not with drama, with awe. She stood beside the piano and looked down at him. "You're terrible at this," she said gently. He laughed under his breath. "I know, but also brave." And that was the moment. She sat beside him on the bench, rested her head on his shoulder, and whispered, "You can stop playing now." He did, but neither of them moved. Because sometimes silence was more musical than sound. That night, they didn't kiss. They didn't even hold hands. They just sat on that worn piano bench as the ghost light flickered behind them and the city breathed far beyond the walls. And slowly, carefully, they let each other back in. They didn't leave the theater until after midnight. Veronica turned off the ghost light, and they stepped outside into a city washed clean by rain. The sidewalks glistened, and reflections shimmered in every puddle. Liam walked beside her, not speaking much, but the silence was different now. It felt full, not empty, like everything that needed to be said was already spoken in the music, in the quiet, in the fact that neither of them had run away this time. She paused beneath an old lamppost, the kind with rust and ivy crawling up its base. "This city is ridiculous," she murmured. "Sometimes I hate it." Liam glanced at her. "And yet you never leave." "I guess I'm waiting for a reason to stay." He looked down, then at her again. "Would it be arrogant to hope I could be that reason?" Her eyes met his, a long, unreadable look. Then, "No," she said softly. "It would be brave." They stood there in the glow of the streetlight, the sound of distant traffic like a soft, steady heartbeat in the background. He reached for her hand. She let him. And then, finally, they leaned in at the same time. The kiss wasn't dramatic, wasn't rehearsed, wasn't perfect, but it was real. And in that moment, the city disappeared. The next morning, they met for coffee on her rooftop. She wore no makeup. He wore yesterday's shirt. They laughed easily. She teased him about his terrible piano playing. He challenged her to teach him a real dance next time. She agreed, under one condition. No spreadsheets allowed. He raised his hand in surrender. Deal. For the first time in years, Veronica felt light. Not because her life was suddenly fixed, but because someone had finally seen the cracks and stayed. And for the first time in his life, Liam didn't feel like he was pretending to be someone. Not with her. Not here. Not now. It began with a phone call. Veronica was sipping coffee by the window when her old agent, Miriam, called for the first time in 2 years. "There's an opening," she said. "Lead choreographer on a Broadway revival. Not performing, but it's creative control. Real influence. Your name would be on the marquee." Veronica blinked. "That's sudden. They've been watching you. Word gets around. Your workshops, your studio classes, someone sent footage." Veronica froze. She knew exactly who had recorded that footage. Liam. "It's intense," Miriam continued. "Demanding schedule. Day and night. But it's your way back in." Veronica looked out the window. Could she really step back into that world? She hung up with a simple, "Gimme a day." That night, Liam cooked for her badly. He burned the chicken, oversalted the pasta, almost set fire to the towel. She laughed so hard she cried. "Let's never open a restaurant," she said between giggles. But as she sat on the counter, watching him scrape ruined dinner into the sink, she told him. "I got offered something," she said. "Broadway." His hands stilled. "As a choreographer," she added. "Not a dancer. But it's a way back." Liam wiped his hands and turned toward her. "That's amazing. You don't sound thrilled." I am. That's going to change things, right? Veronica studied him. Only if you let it. But he was already slipping into silence. Into numbers. Into strategy. You be gone a lot, he said. Rehearsals. Press. People pulling you in 100 directions. So, I don't want to become a footnote. She stepped off the counter. You won't. But you can't promise that, he said quietly. No, she admitted. But I can promise I won't disappear unless you do. That should have comforted him. It didn't. The next week blurred. Rehearsal meetings. Costume concepts. Script revisions. Veronica was suddenly everywhere, her phone constantly buzzing, her studio full of assistants and producers. Liam tried to keep up, dinner twice a week, the occasional late-night walk, but the feeling had shifted. She was rising again, and he was watching. One night, after another canceled dinner and an unanswered message, Liam stood alone in the empty theater and asked the question he never thought he'd ask. What if I'm not enough for her world? It happened on a Tuesday. They were supposed to meet for a late dinner after Veronica's first full production meeting. She was glowing, exhausted, electric. He was already seated at the restaurant, 2 glasses of wine waiting. The waiter came 3 times before she finally walked in, 25 minutes late, breathless, phone in hand. Sorry, she said, sliding into the booth. Everything ran long. My new lighting director's a control freak. Liam smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I ordered the wine, he said. Figured you could use it. God, yes. Thank you. She took a long sip, then another. He watched her, talking fast, her hands in motion, her eyes still somewhere else. On the stage, on the next rehearsal, on the chaos she was beginning to thrive in again. And somewhere between her 3rd sentence and 4th sip, he realized she didn't need him tonight, not as a partner, not even as a presence, just as someone who was there. You haven't asked how I am, he said softly. She paused. What? He smiled, gently, without bitterness. You've been here 10 minutes. I know about your lighting, your stage manager, your missing costume shipment. But you didn't ask about my day. Veronica blinked. I didn't mean. I know, he said. That's the thing. You didn't mean to forget me. You just did. Silence. The restaurant around them faded to static. Liam, she reached across the table, but he pulled back slightly, not harshly, but with weight. I wanted to be your partner, he said. I still do. But I feel like I'm watching you fall in love with something else. And I'm scared you don't have room for both. I'm not choosing between you and my work. But you might have to. No, she said, more firmly now. Don't you dare make me feel guilty for having this opportunity. I'm not, he said quietly. I'm just admitting that I don't know where I fit anymore. She stood then, too fast, too sharp. Then maybe you should figure that out on your own. The sentence hung in the air between them like a broken chandelier. Liam nodded, slowly. Maybe I should. He stood too. Didn't kiss her. Didn't say goodbye. Just left. And this time, she didn't stop him. Then a week. Days passed. Then 2. The city kept moving. So did they. Separately. Veronica threw herself into rehearsals. The show was becoming something real, something beautiful. But every time the lights dimmed, every time the stage fell quiet, she looked for him and found nothing. Liam buried himself in numbers, in meetings, in silence. He didn't go back to the theater, didn't text. But some nights, late, when the skyline was just lights and loneliness, he thought about her dancing alone on that stage and wondered if she ever missed his shadow beside hers. The invitation came in a gold envelope. Veronica found it taped to the mirror in her dressing room 2 nights before opening night. It wasn't from her producers. It wasn't from press. It was from the charity foundation that hosted the gala where everything began. Annual benefit ball. Same theater. Same floor. 1 year later. The handwriting on the back was unmistakable. There's still music between us. I'll be there. Will you? Elle. Her heart skipped, froze, then raced. The night of the gala, the old theater was filled with light and elegance. Champagne flutes clinked. Velvet gowns swept across the floor. But all Veronica could see was the dance floor, that old wooden square lit by a circle of soft white bulbs. That's where she first taught him. That's where he first looked at her, like she was made of galaxies and fire. And then she saw him, Liam, in a simple black suit. No tie, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a small, familiar object. A music remote. He met her eyes. Didn't move. She stepped forward slowly, heart in her throat. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said. I wasn't sure I should. And now, I think I'd regret it forever if I didn't. He pressed the button. A quiet song began. Soft piano, the same melody she used to dance alone to. But this time, she wasn't alone. They stepped onto the dance floor. No audience. No choreography. Just breath. Just movement. He still wasn't graceful. But he was present. And she wasn't flawless. But she was free. They danced like no time had passed. No bitterness. No pride. Only truth. The music faded. The world fell quiet. He leaned in, forehead against hers. I don't want to be a chapter in your story. You're not. I want to write it with you. She smiled, tears shining but not falling. Then let's start a new one. He kissed her. Gently. Finally. Fully. And this time, nothing broke. Epilogue. A year later, her name was on the marquee. So was his, not in lights, but in the dedication. Pharrell, who helped me remember how to dance in the dark. And backstage, between shows and late-night coffees, laughter still echoed. Because in the end, they didn't choose between love and passion. They chose both. Together. And a story. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.